There is something powerful about the morning. Morning is not just the start of another day. It is the doorway to your destiny. How you begin your morning determines how you will govern your day. And if you can govern your day, you can govern your life. In book of Isaiah, chapter 43, God makes a declaration that destroys fear at its root. He says, "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine." That is not poetry. That is identity. That is ownership. That is covenant language. Before you move your body, before you touch your phone, before you respond to anyone's expectations, you must answer one question: who am I? Because if you do not establish identity before activity, activity will distort your identity. Most people wake up and immediately surrender their minds to notifications, demands, pressures, and unfinished conversations from yesterday. They start their day reacting. But reaction is not leadership. Reaction is survival. And you were not designed to survive the day. You were designed to govern it. In book of Isaiah, chapter 43, God makes a profound declaration. "I have called you by your name, you are mine." That statement is not emotional comfort. It is positional authority. It establishes ownership and identity before assignment. Notice the order. God defines you before he discusses what you will face. That means your morning must begin with definition, not confusion. Here is the hook. If you don't define yourself at sunrise, the world will define you by lunchtime. Identity is the foundation of confidence. When you know who you are, decisions become clearer. Boundaries become stronger. Distractions become weaker. A man who knows who he is does not need constant validation. A woman who knows who she is does not compete for attention. Why? Because identity eliminates insecurity, and insecurity is what makes people overwork, overthink, and overreact. Many people lose their peace before 8 a.m. because they consult their problems before they consult their purpose. They check their emails before they check their calling. They review their failures before they review their identity. And whatever you focus on first in the morning sets the emotional temperature of your entire day. Here is another hook. What you meditate on in the first 10 minutes will dominate your mindset for the next 10 hours. When Isaiah 43 declares that you are called by name, it implies intentional design. In biblical language, a name represents assignment. That means you did not wake up randomly. You woke up necessary. There is something today that requires your presence, your discipline, your perspective. But if you enter the day uncertain about who you are, you will approach divine assignments with human hesitation. Professional excellence begins with personal clarity. Leaders who perform at high levels are not driven merely by deadlines. They are anchored in identity. They do not work to prove their worth. They work because they understand their worth. That distinction changes posture. When you work to prove yourself, you operate from anxiety. When you work from identity, you operate from authority. You must develop the discipline of speaking to yourself before the world speaks to you. Declare who you are before circumstances attempt to redefine you. Tell yourself, "I am redeemed. I am intentional. I am assigned. I belong to God." This is not motivational exaggeration. This is psychological alignment. The mind performs according to the identity it accepts. If you accept weakness, you will unconsciously act weak. If you accept authority, you will unconsciously rise to responsibility. Here is the hook. Activity without identity creates exhaustion. Activity with identity creates impact. Look at the stress culture around us. People are busy but not grounded, productive but not purposeful, connected but not centered. The missing ingredient is identity. When you know who you are, you stop chasing applause. You stop comparing journeys. You stop measuring your beginning against someone else's middle. Identity silences comparison. Every morning is a leadership test. Will you lead yourself or will you be led by pressure? Self-leadership starts with self-definition. And self-definition must be rooted in something eternal, not emotional. Circumstances shift, but identity anchored in divine truth remains stable. So before the day demands your strength, establish your identity. Before challenges question your competence, remember your calling. Before fear whispers doubt, Reinforce ownership, because once identity is secure, performance improves naturally. And when you begin your morning defined, you do not spend your afternoon defending. Win the identity battle early, and you win the day before it even begins. Fear is most dangerous in the morning. Not because it is louder then, but because it is subtle. It whispers before you are fully alert. It reminds you of unfinished battles, unresolved conflicts, financial pressure, relationship tension, and yesterday's mistakes. And if you do not confront it immediately, it will quietly shape your posture, your tone, and your decisions for the rest of the day. In Book of Isaiah 43, the command is direct, fear not. Notice, it is not a suggestion. It is not emotional encouragement. It is an instruction. Why would God command you not to fear? Because fear is a choice of focus. Fear magnifies uncertainty and minimizes authority. And whatever you magnify in the morning becomes dominant by the afternoon. Here is the hook. What you tolerate at 6 a.m. will control you at 6 p.m. Fear rarely announces itself dramatically. It disguises itself as logic. It says, be careful. It says, what if this fails? It says, you're not ready. And before you realize it, your confidence has been negotiated. You begin to shrink your vision. You delay difficult conversations. You hesitate where you should act decisively. Not because you lack ability, but because you allowed fear to sit with you unchecked. Professionals understand risk, but leaders confront fear. There is a difference. Risk is external, fear is internal. You cannot always control external risk, but you must govern internal fear. Self-leadership begins with emotional discipline. If you do not discipline your thoughts early, they will discipline you later. When God says, fear not, he immediately follows with identity and presence. I have redeemed you. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. That means fear loses its authority when you remember two things: who you are and who is with you. Fear thrives in isolation. It weakens in awareness of support. Here is another hook: fear grows in silence, but it shrinks under declaration. You must speak before fear settles. Silence gives fear imagination, and imagination without truth creates distortion. The mind will always create worst-case scenarios when it lacks anchoring truth. That is why your morning words matter. When you declare strength, courage, and divine presence, you interrupt fear's narrative. Many talented individuals remain average because fear dictates their decisions. They choose safe over significant, comfortable over courageous, predictable over purposeful. And every time you choose safety over calling, fear becomes stronger. Fear feeds on avoidance. But understand this clearly: courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision to act despite it. And that decision must be made early. If you delay confronting fear, it compounds. A small doubt at sunrise becomes a major insecurity by sunset. Here is the hook. If you don't confront fear in private, it will embarrass you in public. Think about how fear affects performance. It changes body language. It lowers eye contact. It softens voice projection. It reduces clarity in communication. People may not know you are afraid, but they will feel hesitation. And hesitation weakens influence. The internal always manifests externally. When Isaiah 43 reminds you that you will pass through waters and fire, it establishes expectation. Challenges are not anomalies, they are part of development. Fear convinces you that difficulty means you are failing. Truth reminds you that difficulty often means you are growing. Fire does not destroy gold, it refines it. Pressure does not eliminate potential, it reveals it. Your responsibility each morning is not to eliminate every possible problem. It is to eliminate fear's authority over your perception. Perception drives reaction. Reaction shapes outcomes, and outcomes influence destiny. You must ask yourself daily, what story am I believing about today? Is it a story of limitation or a story of growth? Fear tells you you might drown. Faith reminds you you will pass through. When you consistently confront fear early, you build resilience. Resilience is not built in comfort. It is built in confrontation. Each morning that you declare courage, you strengthen neural pathways of confidence. Over time, boldness becomes natural. Discipline becomes consistent. Leadership becomes visible. Do not allow fear to dictate the emotional climate of your day. Establish confidence before conversation. Establish assurance before action. Establish courage before challenge. Because once fear loses control of your thoughts, it loses control of your future. Win the internal argument early, and the external battle becomes manageable. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid pressure. They pray to escape difficulty. They delay responsibility. They look for shortcuts around growth. But in Book of Isaiah 43, the language is unmistakable. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned. Notice the certainty. It does not say if. It says when. That single word changes everything. It tells you that challenge is not a disruption of destiny, it is part of it. Here is the hook. You were not designed to avoid the storm, you were designed to outlast it. Weak thinking asks, why is this happening to me? Mature thinking asks, what is this producing in me? Pressure is not punishment. More often, it is preparation. The waters represent overwhelming circumstances. The fire represents intense testing. And yet the promise is not removal, it is presence. That means growth does not come from escape, it comes from endurance. Professionals who achieve excellence understand this principle deeply. Muscles do not grow without resistance. Character does not develop without opposition. Leadership does not emerge without adversity. Every meaningful advancement in your life will require you to walk through something uncomfortable. And the sooner you accept that truth, the sooner you stop negotiating with mediocrity. Here is another hook. If you avoid what tests you, you will never discover what strengthens you. Many people misinterpret difficulty as disqualification. They assume that if the path is hard, it must not be God's will. But ease is not the evidence of purpose. In fact, purpose often attracts pressure because responsibility attracts resistance. The greater your assignment, the greater the opposition you will encounter, not because you are weak, but because you are significant. When Isaiah 43 speaks about passing through waters, it implies movement. You are not meant to build a house in the river. You are not meant to sit down in the fire. You are meant to pass through. That means the storm is temporary, but the strength it builds is permanent. The challenge has an expiration date. The character it produces does not. Here is the hook. Pain is seasonal, but growth is transferable. Every season of pressure deposits something inside you: patience, wisdom, resilience, emotional discipline. These qualities cannot be downloaded, they must be developed. And development requires friction. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Steel is strengthened in heat. Likewise, your potential is clarified in adversity. There is also a psychological dimension to this truth. When you choose to walk through rather than retreat, you rewire your mind for courage. Each time you confront a challenge and survive it, your confidence increases. You gather evidence that you are capable. And that evidence becomes internal strength for the next battle. Too many people stop at discomfort. They interpret discomfort as danger. But discomfort is often the doorway to expansion. The waters may feel overwhelming, but they teach you balance. The fire may feel intense, but it burns away insecurity. What remains is refined conviction. Here is another hook. What you survive today becomes the story that inspires someone tomorrow. Consider the difference between someone who avoids responsibility and someone who embraces it. The one who avoids remains small, always protected, always cautious. The one who embraces grows, stretches, evolves. One lives safely, the other lives significantly. Safety rarely creates legacy. Significance always requires courage. When you wake up each morning with the mindset that you are built to walk through, not escape, you change your entire posture toward life. Problems stop feeling like threats and start looking like training. Delays stop feeling like denial and start feeling like development. You begin to see resistance as confirmation that you are moving forward. You must train yourself to say, "This will not break me. This will build me." That declaration shifts your perception from victimhood to victory, and perception determines performance. The promise is not the absence of waters. The promise is safe passage. The promise is not the absence of fire. The promise is refinement without destruction. And when you internalize that truth, you stop fearing pressure. You start using it. Walk through with confidence. Walk through with discipline. Walk through with the awareness that every challenge carries a lesson. Because the individuals who transform the world are not those who avoided the fire. They are those who emerge from it stronger than before. Most people want change, but they do not want transformation. They pray for a new season while clinging to old habits, outdated mindsets, and limiting beliefs. In book of Isaiah 43, God declares, "Behold, I will do a new thing." Notice the statement. God does not ask if you are ready. He announces his action. The new thing is coming whether you anticipate it or not. But here is the hook. You cannot step into the new season with an expired version of yourself. Transformation must precede restoration, growth must precede opportunity, and mindset must precede breakthrough. Many people fail to experience God's new thing because they are waiting for circumstances to change while their character remains stagnant. They want doors to open without developing the discipline, patience, and vision required to walk through them. The new season demands preparation. It demands that you become the person capable of handling the responsibility that accompanies the blessing. Your mindset, your values, your focus, and your priorities must evolve before the new opportunities arrive. Otherwise, you will inherit opportunities you are not ready to manage, and failure will masquerade as disappointment. Here is the hook. God's new thing will always meet the old version of you, and if you have not transformed, it will not serve you, it will expose you. Transformation begins with awareness. You must recognize the areas in your life that are outdated, ineffective, or destructive. Habits that once served you may now limit you. Thoughts that once motivated you may now confuse you. Relationships that once elevated you may now restrain you. The new thing requires clarity, and clarity requires honesty. You cannot transform without seeing yourself as you truly are. Many shy away from this reality because self-awareness is uncomfortable. But discomfort is the doorway to growth. Here is another hook. If you continue to water old roots, new growth cannot flourish. God's promise of a new thing is not only about change in your circumstances, it is about change in your capacity. Every new season demands more than your current level of thinking, skill, and faith. If you try to enter a new opportunity with old capacity, you will struggle. But when you invest in transformation, you align your potential with the promise. You develop the resilience, discipline, and insight required to manage higher levels of responsibility and impact. Transformation is the bridge between divine promise and human readiness. People often misunderstand waiting periods as punishment, but they are preparation. While you wait, your character is being refined, your faith is being strengthened, and your vision is being sharpened. The new thing is not simply about God moving, it is about you moving toward readiness. And here is the hook. The time it takes to become ready is shorter than the time it takes to recover from unpreparedness. Every morning is an opportunity to align yourself with transformation. What you think, what you meditate on, and what you declare in prayer sets the trajectory of your evolution. If your morning is filled with doubt, fear, and complaint, you are anchoring yourself in old patterns. If your morning is filled with clarity, vision, and affirmation of purpose, you are planting seeds for the new season to flourish. The new thing requires intentional action. You cannot wait passively for transformation to occur. You must pursue it with discipline. Study what needs to be learned. Remove habits that hinder growth. Surround yourself with people who elevate you. Speak life into yourself daily. Declare your readiness and act consistently as though you are already walking in the new season. Here is the hook. Transformation is not a gift you receive. It is a life you choose to build. The new thing will challenge you, stretch you, and call forth capabilities you did not know you had. That is the purpose of divine preparation. If you embrace transformation, every challenge becomes a catalyst. Every delay becomes a teacher, and every trial becomes a tool for elevation. You will enter the new season with confidence, strength, and authority because you have already become the person the season requires. Change without transformation leads to frustration. Opportunity without preparation leads to failure. But when you align your growth with God's promise, when you invest in becoming who you are meant to be, the new thing arrives and you are fully equipped to handle it. Transformation ensures that when God opens the door, you step through as a vessel of readiness, power, and vision. Here is the final hook. God is always doing a new thing. The question is, are you becoming the person who can embrace it fully? Tomorrow morning, do not reach for your phone first. Reach for your identity. Before you check messages, check your mission. Before you review problems, remember the promise. Stand up and declare, I will not fear. I am redeemed. I am called by name. I belong to God. Today, He is doing a new thing in me. And when you begin your day that way, you are no longer surviving mornings, you are commanding them. That is how Isaiah 43 prayer changes your morning forever.